without names and see what is happening in Bahrain here.
On a mild afternoon in June, I've come to meet Abdullah Al-Dosari. He's a well-known human rights activist, and he too says a protest that started off peaceful and representative of most Bahrainis suddenly became hijacked by a provocative minority, forcing the police to intervene.
I'm not here to protect the police position or to make them in a good position that they've been responding to protect themselves, but the pressure, I think, on them from the public opinion, from the street of Bahrain, from everybody, from the media, from the TV, put a lot of pressure on them to respond in a way that this violence and this protesting that occupying the street for a long time to be cleared from the streets. People get excited.
Within days of the protest, the Crown Prince Salman Al Khalifa called on the protesters to engage in dialogue. The move was welcomed by the opposition parties and the international community, and although many differences lay ahead, dialogue with all sectors of society began. The Crown Prince's initiative came with an amnesty, which saw the release of all opposition prisoners and the dropping of charges against radical political leaders who were outside of the country.
So that's why I'm with the people, and also I am with all the societies.
They included Hassan Mushaima. The Prince's gamble proved to be pivotal in what happened next.
I mean, talking about dialogue now is not enough. Promising is not enough. We have to see something on the ground.
Hassan Mushaima is a man with a reputation of being radical. He was once the leader of the opposition Wifaq party, the one with 18 of 40 seats in parliament, but he defected over his rejectionist approach and now heads up the unofficial Haq party. The group refused any registration with the government as required by Bahraini law, but was able to operate with relative freedom by the authorities. Mushaima is no stranger to political violence and has been imprisoned many times. He served his longest sentence between 1996 and 2001. Up until his return to Bahrain in February this year, he'd been living in the UK for 6 months in self-imposed exile. Mushaima's return was not only controversial because of his past, but allegations soon emerged that he'd stopped over in Beirut en route to Bahrain, where some say he met with Hezbollah leaders. There's no confirmation of this, but if it's true, it could stoke further tensions here. Upon arrival to Bahrain, he immediately rejected all offers of dialogue, and the opposition found itself quickly losing control of the demonstrations.
Those people who paid, those people who've been killed, those people who are ready to be killed anymore.
I would say the peaceful movement was hijacked by extremists who wanted more than what the requirements were of the people when they started the movement, and they had another agenda, a different agenda, and it was more like a coup rather than a peaceful movement.
I think the simple answer is Hassan Mushaima. He came to Bahrain to destroy the people demands. Hassan Mushaima, his slogan is well known. He said, unless a couple of deaths took place in Bahrain, your rights will not be received. And this is why everybody in Bahrain was pushing himself for death, so his demands and his group will be receiving more attention. Is this a way to raise our demand peacefully? Is this peaceful rally or demonstration? Totally is not.
The problem with Mushaima's party is that it didn't have the much-needed support of the country's Shia clerical establishment. Mushaima himself had tried to fill the role of religious guide, but without any formal training, this didn't work. And so he's said to rely on the passion of Haq Party's radical message, and according to one commentator, its ability to put on the streets youths who are small in number, but ready to skirmish with the police every night if necessary. And sure enough, suddenly the protesters' demands had changed. Instead of concentrating on popular reforms that we heard about on the 14th of February, Mushaima and the newly released Abdul Jalil al-Sinkis, also of the Haq Party, started to radicalize the protesters. They called to change the system altogether, or in Arabic, Isqat al-Nizam. The area around the Khor roundabout was spray-painted with statements like death to al-Khalifa.
I don't think that these guys, when they started the protest, their objective was to bring down government. That was totally not the objective. But that was developed at a later stage by a group of them who were calling to bring down the government. And that was one of the biggest mistakes they have done.
Hassan Mushaima came and demanded the end of the Bahraini ruling family. King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, his son, the Crown Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, and the Prime Minister, the King's uncle, Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa. The increasingly militant tendency of the protesters brought a response from the more moderate groups and the Sunni population. Sheikh Abdul Latif Al Mahmoud is a popular man. At the end of February, he rallied his supporters to counter the call for Isqat al-Nidam. I met with him at the country's Islamic Education Association, where he told me that many people in the country felt left out when the radical elements arrived and overshadowed the protests.
كانت الحركة السياسية التي انتقادتها هذه المجموعة من الشيعة ترى نفسها أنها هي التي تمثل الشعب، وأنه ليس يوجد في الدولة إلا طرفان يرون أنفسهم الشعب والنظام الحاكم هو الطرف الثاني. عندما بدأت المشاكل وتطورت قليلا أعلن ولي العهد أنه يفتح باب الحوار للوصول إلى حل المشكلة. المجموعة الكبيرة هذه 400,000 أو يزيد، هؤلاء المجموعة وجدوا أنفسهم سوف يكونون بعيدين عن الحوار، وبالتالي كان لابد أن يثبتوا وجودهم، لأن أصبحت القضية ليست قضية خاصة بهذه المجموعة، وإنما هي تتعلق بقضايا الدستور، بقضية مستقبل البحرين. ولذلك جاءت المجموعات الكبيرة هذه كلها لكي تقول نحن طرف له ثقله في البحرين، ولا بد أن نشارك في الحوار، ولا بد أن يكون لنا رأي في تغيير النظام أو في الإصلاحات التي يمكن أن تدخل على النظام، لأننا معنيون بذلك. فكان هذا هو الذي جاء من الجماهير، وعبرنا عن آراء الجمهور في هذه الأحداث، ووضعنا أيضا خطتنا أننا أيضا ندعو إلى الإصلاح سواء في الجانب الدستوري أو الجانب السياسي أو الجانب التنظيمي للدولة أو الجانب المعيشي. ولذلك نحن قدمنا ورقة تفصيلية لكل القضايا التي يمكن أن نضعها على طاولة الحوار.
On the 3rd of March, Sheikh Abdul Latif Al Mahmoud rallied his supporters again. This time, he says over 300,000 people turned up. It was in an effort to show solidarity with the Al Khalifa family and in support of gradual reforms. This was the Sunni response to Mushaima's radical protests. Sheikh Abdul Latif Al Mahmoud's assembly brought people into the streets around Al Fatah Mosque. Al Mahmoud and his supporters welcomed the release of prisoners and agreed with most of the Shia opposition's demands that were echoing around Pearl Roundabout. However, the very clear difference was his insistence on the continuing rule of the Al Khalifa family. A month into the protests, Mushaima made a move that escalated the situation. He led his supporters on a march to the Rifa Palace, the royal court. Locals say it was an attempt for major sectarian confrontation in this largely Sunni area. Police managed to place barbed wire across the road to prevent the Shia protesters from confronting Sunni vigilantes who'd come out to show solidarity with the royal family.
Here in Bahrain, we have a total agreement between the people of Bahrain and the royal family that the people of Bahrain agree that the royal family will continue to rule the country. We don't have any sort of disagreement on that issue.
And this wasn't exclusive to the Sunni groups. I asked various Shia opposition parties about the ruling family to discover that it was their support for the Al Khalifa family which ultimately differentiated them from the likes of Hassan Mushaima and other radical Shia groups. So you have had dialogue, you're saying,
yes,
with the Crown Prince?
Yes.
And this is a positive step?
Yes, of course. This is a positive step. Actually, he's...
At the office of the Nationalist Democracy Society, the leader of Al-Qawmi party sits in front of a poster of Saddam Hussein. His group is part of the Democratic Alliance, which includes the well-known Wahad party.
No political society.
I asked him about
who was blocking the roads
and whether he agrees that King Hamad should go.
Because the roundabout was almost like a bazaar. Everybody going there, and he announced what he won't demand. For the 7 societies, political societies, they're asking for reform. But as you know also, there is other parties there, unofficial parties, they're asking to remove the regime in Bahrain.
In part 2, we hear from an Indian expat who was beaten up at the roundabout. And we ask what lies ahead for Bahrain's political future.
How can you convince your people that your presence in such parliament is something going to be of value?